Hello and welcome to the Expanding State podcast. I am your host, Jeni, and I am delighted to be here with you. This is a space for people who are seeking growth or who are already growing in a way that is not by pushing harder, but by becoming safer, steadier, more aligned with who they already are. So here we explore identity, nervous system expansion, steadier growth, faith, beliefs, success, inner authority, and so much more, so that the life that you are building and actually desire can feel like it actually fits and it can hold. So let's begin. This very first episode of the Expanding State podcast is a special one, and we're going to just set the tone for everything that is to come. So I'm really excited about what we have in store today and what we have going forward. So today I want to talk about something that is so common. I see it all the time, where somebody comes and they have done everything right. They've invested in themselves. They built the skills. They show up consistently. They're doing all of the things, and still there is something that just keeps, not quite making it, not quite moving, not quite allowing them to have the success or the results that they truly desire. And we are going to talk in that today's episode, exactly about what that is, why it keeps happening, what this cycle is, how it keeps showing up, and a little bit about what we can do about it. So I want to start by talking about a specific example of somebody who came to me and they kept hitting this ceiling of $150,000 a year in their business. And so they just kept, it seemed like no matter what they did, they had tons of business coaches, they tried lots of different strategies, they, did all of these different things. They worked on their mindset, they worked on so many different things, especially things outside of themselves, but they couldn't seem to get past this $150,000 a year. And so they were at this level for more than 5 years at this point. So they had some growth, some expansion, and then it just was staying right there, kind of capped. If it went up a little bit, then something would happen and it would bring back down. So one example was they started to go a little bit above that 150 and close to about to experience almost 200,000 that 1 year. And they made a decision that they thought was aligned at the time. They thought that it was the right thing to do, but just steadily, everything started bringing it right back down to that 150. So it seemed as though no matter what they did, they just couldn't quite get past that point. So what was actually happening here is that they were reaching a point that has nothing to do with capability. It has everything to do with internal capacity and what I call the identity set point and the nervous system calibration around that set point. So after, this specific thing happened in their experience, so what comes around is that we start to, go into this idea of, well, maybe I'm not doing enough. Maybe I'm not trying hard enough, right? But here's the thing that I want you to think about right away before we even dive into more of what this is. But no matter where you are and what it is that you're trying to achieve, I guarantee you that it is not that you are not doing enough. Because you clearly are. If you look at all of the effort that you're putting in, all the ways that you are genuinely trying to, make that desire come to fruition, hit that goal, hit the success, whatever it is for you that you're working towards, I guarantee you're doing enough. But what is actually governing this gap between what you are capable of doing and what you are currently living and the experience and results that you are getting in your life across all domains, this gap is the problem. This is exactly what we're going to talk about today. So I want to say a little bit about who this episode is going to be for today. So this is, if you are somebody who has started to achieve something, you've achieved something that's significant, you have felt that relief of achieving something, the excitement that comes with it, but then there's this immediate bracing for the correction. So you hold on to it and then you think, okay, this is going to be taken away, and you start to brace yourself for when that's going to happen. I often think of this song by, I think it's Daniel Boone, Beautiful Things, because I feel like this illustrates it so well, because he discusses in the song about, this beautiful life that he currently has, this person that he enjoys being able to be with, but what's his number one thing? The person who loves her stands the most to lose, because now he's afraid that it's going to be taken away. So it seems like the whole premise is about, please don't take away these things that I love. And I feel like that's exactly what happens in this situation. Because you start to have that little bit of success, you start to see that things are growing, you start to see that you're heading in the direction that you desire, and then you just start bracing immediately. So if you have ever been in a situation like that, you've ever experienced this to any degree, then I want you to continue listening, because this is going to explain exactly the mechanism underneath what is happening here. So let's dive right into what that mechanism is. And I already alluded to it a little bit, but the identity set point. And so this is very, very important. This is crucial. Our identity set point is the level at which that our nervous system is calibrated. So it learned what our identity was very early on in life, okay? And it calibrated around it. So as in, I am the type of person who experiences this. I am the type of person who, for this is safe. This level of expansion is safe. This level of expression is safe. I'm okay doing this or this. But if we go beyond that, then we need to correct, because that is not safe for me. So this is kind of where our identity set point lies. It is an actual biological system, and that has learned what to expect. Simply, what life looks like for somebody like you. So with your identity. So I want to make sure that you understand that this is nothing to do with capability. It is purely about capacity and that set point of where we are currently governed, okay? So they want to make sure there's a clear distinction here between self-worth and self-belief, and then this identity set point, because the self-worth and self-belief live in the cognitive layer. Okay, these are cognitive constructs. They are things that you hold in your mind. So they are a belief system that is at a higher level. But the identity set point is actually pre-cognitive. It comes before the thoughts or the beliefs. So it is even deeper. It is a level below that. So the level of the body's autonomic regulatory system. So this is why it's so key to understand this, to be able to start to work from here, because it is going to regulate everything else above it, including our beliefs, our thoughts, our feelings, our actions, how we feel about ourselves. All of those things come after, okay? So I want to make sure that we really have a clear understanding that those ideas, like our beliefs, live in the mind. Our beliefs are very important, but we have to go a little bit deeper in order to make the changes necessary in order to change the beliefs. So an analogy that I want you to think about that I think will help bring this, into a visual picture is when we look at a thermostat, right? And you've probably heard an analogy of a thermostat before when it comes to like self-image or something else as it's described. But I want you to look at it just a little bit differently this time. So think about the thermostat. It does not respond to your preferences, your desires, or what you believe the temperature should be. It purely responds only to the point that it is set at. So it's not good, it's not bad. It's just like, well, this is the point that I'm set at, so this is exactly what I'm going to do for you. If the temperature starts to dip below that point in the winter, then it's going to activate, it's going to bring it right back up to where it is set, where it's calibrated. In the summer, if the temperature starts to rise above a little bit, it's obviously going to turn on, it's going to, initiate that correction, and it's going to bring it back down to what it's set at. It does not care how you feel about the temperature. It doesn't care what your desires are. It cares only what it is calibrated to. Okay, so I want you to think about that when we think in terms of what our nervous system is calibrated to. It is calibrated to a certain identity. And it doesn't care if you start to think differently, if you start to think bigger, if you start to, desire something bigger, whatever that is at a higher level, and if it begins to start to come into play, into practice, and you start to see it, it's just going to say this is different, and it's going to start correcting. Okay, so make sure that you understand that this set point is not good or bad. We don't need to look at it in a negative way. We just want to make sure that we understand what it is and that it doesn't care what our thoughts are. It is going to work and keep us in check, if you will, no matter what. So a good thing to make sure that we keep in mind with this is that this set point is not some fixed trait that you were born with, okay? It was calibrated. It was calibrated through an accumulation of experiences in our earliest years, especially, particularly those first 7 to maybe 10 years of our lives, before we had a lot of cognitive reasoning, before we could really, look at things and make our own decisions about stuff. So just watching and seeing, when we looked at our early environments, relational patterns that were around us, moments where the nervous system then recognize what level of expansion is safe to hold. So if you were in an environment where, people were really criticized for trying to do something outside of the norm, or trying to improve themselves or grow past a certain amount or earn a certain amount of income, then you started to learn what level of success was okay, what type of relationship is safe. So all of these different things that calibrated our nervous system around our identity and decided what we should be able to do and not be able to do. Okay, so it's very important to understand that this happened outside of your control, your conscious control. So there is nothing to blame. There is nothing to, reject. There is nothing to be mad about. We just recognizing and bringing awareness to it is one of the most important and crucial steps in being able to actually recalibrate and then move forward into a new, more expanded version of life for ourselves. So making sure that we're taking out all self-blame here, that it is not you, we don't need to blame our parents, we don't need to blame anybody. They're all just living their best lives that they know how, and we are just bringing awareness to that so that we understand how this came to be, that it is not some character flaw that we were born with. And the beautiful thing about that is when you understand this, we know that you can change a calibration. So as we bring light to it and we bring this awareness, then we know that it can be altered, it can be changed. And that is, probably one of the most exciting pieces of information, right? It's very empowering to know that now that we understand something, we can actually change and shift it, recalibrate it for the life that we actually want to be living. So it should be more empowering than, degrading at this point. So I want to talk about one thing really quickly. So not, putting down any other types of work, but most work, when we're looking at beliefs, mindset, thoughts, all of that stuff is happening on a higher level than this biological level that we're discussing right now. And so they are all real. They are all important when we're looking at our habits or strategies or whatever it is. We do need those things. But the problem is, if we're not changing the baseline that is underneath all of those things, then it's not really going to have a big impact. We may see a little bit of expansion here or there, and then it will return back because we haven't shifted the baseline. So I want to talk now a little bit about two different ceilings that we can see. So the first one, when we look at a capacity ceiling. So a capacity ceiling is what the majority of people are working on when they decide to invest in themselves. So this is where you're getting your degrees, your certifications, you're learning the skills, you're learning the strategies, you're doing, intellectual level things, right? So you're learning how to physically do something. So this is, increasing our capability, right? So this is the capability ceiling. So the more that you learn, the more capable you are to actually accomplish a task, to do something. Now you know how to do it, right? So this is the process that we need to go through. And these things are crucial. They're important. We have to actually know what we are going to be doing. But then there's another ceiling, and this is the set point ceiling. And this is different, okay? This is not about what you can do. It's about what your system will allow you to hold, to receive, to sustain permanently without correction. So you can have a much higher capability ceiling than your set point ceiling. You can be a very skilled worker. You can be very good at what you do, whatever that is. But if your set point is set at a lower threshold, then it doesn't matter how much better you get at something, it will allow you to expand past this other level. So just understanding these two different things. And it is this very mismatch right here that creates that experience of almost or nearly there, or you're, just getting to a level and then finding yourself inexplicably returning to the one before it. Because as our capability increases and we start trying to act on that, and we start seeing improvements, we can feel that we're so close, but then there's like something just keeps pulling us right back down. And so that is the set point ceiling, right? Which is the identity and nervous system set point where everything is calibrated to. So making sure that we, can see some of the areas where this might show up most visibly. For example, if your income starts to rise and then somehow it gets redistributed, that could happen in a lot of different ways. Maybe like you make a decision that seemed logical at the time in the business, but then slowly but surely it starts to move its way right back to where it was. Or maybe you start to get recognition for the work that you've been doing, but it either gets deflected or it gets minimized, or you just, pretend that didn't happen. I was just at something the other day where people were getting awarded for something that they did, and the amount of the people that were kind of deflecting that recognition and saying, well, I was just doing my job, I was just doing what anyone else would do, whatever. So their ability to receive that was clearly being challenged, right? That set point was being challenged. It might be coming out in a relationship. Maybe you're starting to reach a different layer of intimacy that you haven't experienced before with this set point. And so something is going to introduce distance. Something is going to start to bring it back to the layer that is safe and known, right? And then, maybe it happens with success and whatever that looks like for you. And you start to have success, but then you start to feel this unsettledness, this anxiety that comes with it, instead of feeling settled and happy and just grateful to have it. So maybe it goes back to that feeling that you're starting to get success and something might happen to cause it to go back, and you start to brace for that impact. So these are just some of the ways that it can start to show up. And so the key point with any one of these different domains in life is that your capability has never been the issue. Okay, so the individual that this is happening to is perfectly capable of the level that they are starting to reach. The problem is that the set point is not capable of holding it. And because holding it requires the nervous system to recognize this level as safe, as normal, as ordinary, as your, standard mode of operation, as what is just typical for you. And it just doesn't recognize it there yet. So let's talk a little bit about this corrective mechanism and how it actually happens. So when the results begin to expand past this threshold, past the identity and nervous system set point, then the nervous system registers this expanded state or expanded level as foreign. Okay, it's not necessarily that it's dangerous, like tiger chasing you dangerous, but it's not safe. It's unrecognized. It is not seen as your ordinary. And then it initiates a return to baseline. And this is not through some big dramatic event. and it is not obvious. It is not, usually like the big self-sabotage that we might think of. It's going to be a series of, completely reasonable looking decisions on the outside. So each of which might make perfect sense in isolation, but then collectively they're going to return you to the level where the baseline lives. So what it might look like in practice, so say the income starts to rise, then there's a business decision that seemed like it was sound at the time, or some unexpected expense comes up, or there's a pivot that you thought felt aligned and you went down that direction, or maybe things just start to slow. Whatever was bringing the income in is now starting to slow, and all for reasons that seem completely justified. Like maybe there's burnout, maybe there's a season of rest that's happening, you're just getting fatigued. So every individual decision is justified and defensible, but it's this pattern that we start to see in hindsight that really starts to show itself, and it becomes very apparent when you look back at it, right? Or maybe we come back to a relationship set where you start to reach that deeper level of relationship, increased intimacy than the set point has ever experienced before. And then, something starts to happen to create distance or withdrawal. Now maybe there's just not time. So now maybe something else is starting to take up the time, or like it's just very subtle little things that will come up that you may not even recognize at first as being an issue until all of a sudden you look back and you're like, okay, this is a pattern that just keeps repeating itself. Each time I'm in a new relationship and I start to get to this level, then something always happens to bring me back. So what does that look like? And it can be a little bit different. Again, this is not something big and dramatic, right? So the correction doesn't feel like it's self-sabotage from the inside. It feels like you're just, discernment, it's good judgment, maybe it's just appropriate caution or reevaluation. But all of these things are not to say that you're making bad decisions, because you aren't making bad decisions. It's to just that the decisions are coming from a set point, which is generates to maintain the calibration. So it's the set point that is truly making these decisions, and because they're coming from this set point, it feels like they're completely reasonable, right? So we don't think that we're doing the wrong thing. We think that we're doing the right thing because our nervous system is telling us, well, this is what we need to do. Let's get back to where we belong. And so it just sends these subtle signals. We make the decisions that we think are the right decisions to make, and then it just brings us right back. So when we look at what this vicious cycle actually looks like, so we have the expansion attempt, right? So expanding whatever state of or domain of life that the person or individual is trying to expand in. So now there's genuine effort. They are investing into it. There's a desire, there's a goal of some kind. They're doing the work, right? They're not just thinking about expansion and not doing anything. They're actually trying to make it happen. And then they start to see some results. They start to see the levels begin to rise. And then this is where the correction comes in. So this corrective mechanism that we just went over, where the nervous system says, okay, this is something outside of what we are calibrated for. So we need to start making some decisions and bringing it back down, right? It's gentle. It's not like in your face. It's not something that just really stands out. So now we start to come back to where we were, right? So we had the effort. We started to see some results. The correction comes in. And so now we look at what happened, and then the self-doubt starts to come into play. So now the person is assessing what has happened. And because they can't see this mechanism for what it is, they try to find the cause. And usually they find the cause within themselves. They say statements like, I moved too fast. I just wasn't ready. I self-sabotaged again. I hold myself back. I must not really want this. I'm not willing to try hard enough. I wasn't disciplined enough. I need to work on my mindset. I need to do, whatever, X, Y, and Z. So they think about all the things that they think they are responsible for, and that it was somehow their fault that this set point came in and had the correction. So, this is true, genuine feelings, but this is the wrong diagnosis. This is not what is taking place. So now we had the attempt. We started to see results. We have the correction. Now, as we look at what happened, we begin to doubt ourselves. And so now, what do we do when we think that we were the problem? We put in more effort. We try harder. Okay, so now the response to that is usually escalation. So maybe just more strategy, new strategies, more investment, more accountability, more discipline, more effort, more pushing, more hustling. So we just, double down on our efforts. And so now we realize that the problem is that the effort was never the ceiling. The set point is the ceiling. And so the ceiling remains. And the real struggle here is that as we push harder, we have now self-doubt, we've tried to push harder, that is going to make the set point like ingrained even more, even at that level or maybe lower than it was. Okay, so by trying to push harder, we're actually making things worse because we're trying to force action and changes on top of the set point instead of coming down to where the set point actually lives. So now we stay at the same ceiling or it goes down. And then it just keeps going in this cycle. So then we try again for expansion. We have the correction, the self-doubt. We think we need to push harder. And then we just get ourselves into this groove. So it's like you're a car running across a groove, and we just keep going in and making it deeper and deeper and deeper. So we have to be able to actually get out of that and adjust the track that we are taking. So the reason why, hard work does not help and it actually makes it worse is that if there's effort applied at a different point than the threshold, it is applied to the wrong level. Okay, so we don't need to strengthen capability. Remember, you've done that work. You are capable of whatever it is that you're trying to do. You've probably invested tons into yourself on a, what I call like the professional development level, which is great. And we all need that. But we also have to look at this other level, right? So now you're just getting less and less returns on that effort. So you keep putting in more and more work without any increase of returns. So this leads to increasing exhaustion. This leads to, complete burnout, to frustration. Like, I have all this knowledge, I have all these skills, I have this capability, and yet I can't seem to get past this threshold. So remember, it is not a lack of effort. It is a lack of the recalibration that is necessary in order to move to and beyond into the next threshold. So these two things require completely different responses. If it was a matter of effort and capability, that's a very different thing to do in order to work on it versus a matter of recalibration. So going back to make sure that we understand that there is no character flaw here. Okay, I want to make sure that we know this because it's crucial to understand that. And that ceiling, the correction, the cycle. So this is not evidence that somebody is broken. It is not evidence that somebody is not ready. It is not evidence that you are fundamentally limited. Okay, it is just evidence of a nervous system who is doing its job, which is exactly what it was designed to do. It's a well-functioning nervous system, which is a good thing because it's maintaining the calibration that it has learned is safe. But so the set point is not a flaw in itself. It's just that it has outlived that original context, right? So where it was created, we are trying to move beyond that and expand into something else. So it needs to come along for the ride. It's still governing us in a way that is a level that we are not looking to live in anymore. So understanding that biology, responds to that recalibration, not to more effort. And in fact, more effort on top of a uncalibrated baseline is only going to make things worse. So we really want to make sure to distinguish between these two different things. So try, applying more discipline to the same approach is not going to change anything, right? That's what effort says. Effort says that we just push harder, we try more, we try new strategies. Whereas recalibration says that we work at the level where the pattern actually lives and where the nervous system's baseline is, and then change what the system recognizes as safe to hold. So one is working above the set point. So trying to change things, working above at an intellectual level rather than at the set point is the same essentially as trying to work with something externally outside of yourself and thinking that it's going to change things from within. So it just isn't going to hit the point that it needs to. So the hope with this is that when the baseline shifts, okay, when it truly shifts and the correction mechanism no longer initiates at that expanded level, because the expanded level is no longer foreign. Okay, that is the idea. It is simply now where the system lives. So if we have truly shifted the nervous system calibrated state to a new and more expansive level, then when we start to reach that level, when we start to experience things and a new level of results, it's not going to initiate that corrective mechanism that we discussed earlier, because it will say, this is just ordinary, this is where I live, this is my new baseline. Okay, so what I want to make sure that we understand is that the ceiling has never been about your capability or your desire. Those are not in question. Those are not the problem, right? It has always been about your nervous system was calibrated to recognize as safe to hold. So the ceiling is not evidence that you are not ready. It is a set point doing exactly what it was calibrated to do. So unlike a character flaw or something that we have to work past that cannot be changed, this set point can be changed. And this is exactly what this work is for. So I hope that this gave you a really great outline to the type of information that we're going to be sharing on this podcast, the level of depth that we're going to be going into each and every episode. And I can't wait to see you on the next one. So if this resonated in any way, then please be sure to like and subscribe so that you get updates when every new episode is being released, and maybe share with somebody who you recognize is experiencing this pattern in their life in some domain. So until next time, I hope you are enjoying this expansive life.